Building large-scale fault-tolerant and reliable systems is a long process. It's a hectic process. It goes over multiple iterations, but everything that's large and long starts with some basic blocks. And one of the basic blocks here is having the right mindset. This talk will explore about framing your thoughts, having the right mindset, and cultivating it over the period of time so that you get your infrastructure right. Hello, everyone. This is Saurabh Phaltane. I work for Google on Google Search Infrastructure. And this talk, I will be talking to you through lessons that I have learned over the course of this years. In basically building highly reliable, fault tolerant, and scalable web scale applications. My experience ranges from like small scale startups to this large behemoth Google, and I'll be laying down some basic principles that are really required for you to define and decide what should be a thought process while not building any large scale systems. Before we actually start taking deeper into how do we cultivate the mindset of being an SRE, let's try to understand what a definition of an SRE is and how that has really evolved over the course of last 35 years. I feel that has been a lot going on in the computer society and the computer as well as computer in the last 30 years. We started somewhere around mainframe computers. Used to set up racks, used to set up switches, all handheld thing. It has evolved to a state where in 2000 there was a dot-com bubble. A dot-com burst where like thousands of dot-com sites came online. People started thinking internet as a new way of basically serving services, giving out information, and tons of companies came online into the dot-com burst. Internet was an era. In last 10 years, what I see is there's something called a cloud burst that has really happened where multi-tenant architecture, SaaS applications have really taken a long haul. You see like tons of applications, SaaS applications are now thriving in the industry. And they all really started around 2000. Like any big cloud providers, they are thriving as of today. And that has really made a drastic shift from like, what managing a mainframe computer was, what managing a physical colo was, versus what you really need to do when you're dealing in virtual environments. You don't have to deal with all the physical environments, but to some degree, the principles have still stayed the same, but there has been a big evolution that has happened. If you move ahead, like the present era is kind of an AI era where you see a big burst of agentic applications. But what I see here on is like in next 10 years, these agentic applications would be the next big thing. And that probably you might have something you've come up after like next 10 years. But if you see the relationship between a server and a client, it has evolved. And so has the technologies that are basically pairing these two things together have evolved. I mean, look at the very basic technology like evolution of 2G internet. Then it went to 3G, 4G, 5G. You are essentially talking about the number of bits that are sent over the network, and those are exponentially going up. As those number of bits that are sent over the network have evolved, so have the threats, so have the technologies powering them, so have the customer expectations of experiences that you should be delivering to your customers have evolved, and so has the operations that were basically necessary to support this kind of heavy internet traffic has changed. So that's how the evolution of computer has basically evolved the role of an security engineer. I should certainly mention that security and compliance is also a very important thing that has evolved with this ever evolving landscape. And as a site reliability engineer, I think our perspective of looking at security and compliances has changed a lot with a lot of things like GDPR, PCI, HIPAA, yeah, and those kind of compliances are basically making a move. Site reliability engineers nowadays have started thinking into how do I make a system more reliable. At the same time, I cannot be compromising on the security and the compliance aspect of it. I think as the reliance on the internet has increased, so as the feature offerings or the applications that are served over the internet have training very basic application informational content. Now we are in the age where you are basically delivering very critical, very sensitive information over the internet, and a lot of lights and a lot of people are dependent on the internet. There is a big spectrum where you can basically deliver all the gamified gamified TikTok kind of a content to delivering critical human care. So I think it becomes more and more necessary to ensure that your systems are reliable and real people are depending for their real needs on the system. I mean, looking at this thing, I still feel what has really made SREs now think is as the systems are evolving, as these new things are built, right, we really need to basically, I think as we are building this SRE mindset, the first and the foremost question that I would really ask myself was, what's the size of the problem I'm really trying to solve here? When I say the size of the problem, it essentially boils down to what size of the company, what is the number of users are we talking about, and what are the company priorities, and are aligned the goals of your role with the priorities of the company. For a certain companies or of different sizes, let's say it's a small scale seed stage startup where the resources are pretty constrained, you really have limited number of users, the priority of the company is basically delivering x number of features, so Y number of days, and the X and Y are unimaginable when we come from a large organization to a small organization where the delivery speed is very different. For me, I think the most important thing for a small scale organization would be optimizing for delivery speed. And sometimes it's just fine to compromise on some of the reliability aspects there, but probably invest that you can deliver those features pretty quickly to the end users and in automation for delivery. So investing into the build process so that those features are quickly and reliably delivered there probably would be the most important thing for that smaller scale organ. But as this company scale, as you go from like a stage to something like a growth stage company, Series B, Series C, where you have a number of users, I think the aspects start taking more precedence. You really need to be aware that really depending on the user experience and along with the features. So you need to basically wear different hats to ensure that the reliability aspect of your product is relatively worth. And then you are also at the same time investing in the right set of tools to those set of users. You are basically investing into the right SLOs, defining the right SLOs, defining the right reliability metrics, monitoring them over a period of time, ensuring that you have the right set of technologies to support those metrics. You are basically displaying those metrics on your site so that people are aware that they can trust your application, they can trust your site. And this is pretty much available on all of the important SaaS applications you want today. They kind of display the reliability metrics, and that is more like a selling point for these companies where they demonstrate that hey, we have been 99.99% available for like past 60 months or whatever, like past 60 days. And that's the reason you should be buying a product. Most of the security companies are kind of using this metric as a unique selling point, and that basically is something that you should be considering for that stage of the organization. I think also accordingly the security and the compliance requirements evolve as the companies get mature, or maybe you can just do away with like some basic PCI DSS kind of compliances, but as those like FedRAMP would be a next priority based on the set of customers you're addressing. The different security challenges might need investment into different tools for delivering the secure experiences. So you should need to invest into those next level of tools and technologies at that stage of the company. And yeah, I mean that's what essentially happens. Like as you grow from a very small organization to a very large organization, you need to really prioritize your reliability story with the size of the organizations, with the goal of the organization, so that there is some coherence onto what we are building, how it is being consumed, and what's the end goal of your a very core aspect of design thinking as far as the reliability is concerned is important for a site reliability engineer. You need to really evolve with the company. I think as they're defining what the SRE mindset looks like, how do you basically cultivate this mindset? Some of the core principles that are clearly required by designing your reliability story is some of the things that I have here. First thing that I would really ask myself is what the customer experience is going to look like, what's my end user, what is he really expecting from my application, and how can I really build my reliability story around it. So building a SRE mindset really starts with customer experience first. What is your customer? What is it expecting from your application? To put things in more detailed perspective, would like to highlight an example. Let's say for an example, like presently the company I work for delivers some n number of 10 blue links in whatever X number of seconds. For us, the most critical important and the important aspect is basically delivering those n number of results within a certain time frame. You need to be accurate as much as possible, and at the same time you need to deliver those experiences to the end user within a 1 second of time frame. And that's where most of the optimization and most of our energy goes in. Whereas one of the last organization I worked for, I think latency was not much of a concern there. I think back then we really optimized for reliability. We had a status page which basically said that we have been up for like last 30 days for 99.99% of the time, and that is one of our metric that you can reliably trust us to use and build your application on top of that. So I think each reliability story essentially starts with customer experience. And once you get a grip on the customer experience, you can invest in the right set of tools, right set of technologies, and basically define your metrics of success for reliability based on what a customer experience is going to look like. I always think the most important thing that you need to do, not just from the SRE perspective, but even from a career perspective, is defining before you actually dive. Planning is the most important aspect of any career, any phase, and even for site reliability engineers. I think that's the most important thing that you should be doing before you actually take on any project. Finding what are the metrics of success, writing it down like, hey, these are the 5 set of things that I would be addressing with my this XYZ project. These are my end goals. These are the metrics and the SLO definitions for me. This is how I'm basically gonna chalk out the entire landscape. I think defining when in advance doesn't really solve the problem, but it at least keeps you on the track. It at least keeps you from getting detract on something that you shouldn't really be addressing. It helps people review your plans. It helps people basically guide you. So I think defining before you die is one of the most important things that SRE should consider from the mindset building perspective. The third thing that I think is important is basically balancing velocity or innovation with reliability. This, to some degree, I explained in my previous slide, is like as the maturity of the organization, as the size of the organization grows from X, Y, Z stage, I think your reliability story should really evolve. But there should be a threshold where you're really balancing the velocity, you're really balancing the innovation with the reliability, because real people are dependent on real things for your on your application. I think balancing velocity with the right reliability knobs and bolts is very crucial. And the third thing and the fourth thing that I think is crucial as a site reliability engineer is keeping on top of your mind, like, things are always gonna fail. Like, you cannot build for success. You have to design for failure. Things are always gonna fail. There are always gonna be edge scenarios which you never considered, which always stay off your plate, and which is something you should pre-plan in advance. And this is where this aspect and this design thinking comes in place. Like, you have to really design for failure. You are not designing for success. And that way you really bring in those critical aspects and critical thoughts on your mind. Like, what are the different ways this application can fail, and how could I avoid that? One of the things we largely do over at Google is even like, running a lot of dirt tests. It's more like simulating failures in an application before you have actually productionized it, or like, you have onboarded a new feature. Is like, running through different scenarios and trying to simulate what are the different failure scenarios you can come across, and whether it's degrading customer experience. One, another, do we have the right alerting and monitoring setup so that we get alerted well in advance before customer notices it? And third, do we have the right mitigation strategies in place so that if in case there is a fallout, we have a way to mitigate that thing before customers actually feel the heat and you have a bad reputation going out there.
So I think these are like different strategies, guarding, having the right guardrails for our application in the build phase, in the like in the delivery phase, and define what are the different places where, like, your network can fail, your disks can fail, your servers can fail, things can go out of order. As in data centers, my previous company, we ran a multi-AZ and multi-data center kind of infrastructure, just to ensure that, if a specific data center of a specific region is down, we are always taken care by another region. There is failover scenarios, there is replication, there is, like, backups, there is standby backup, there is a third backup, so that you never lose your data. So all these things essentially spin up from the same, from a very core aspect, that you really need to think about failure while you're designing this application. And designing it for failure is one of the very crucial aspects in design thinking as far as site reliability is concerned. Another thinking that I think that has really helped me, and I think is very important as far as the design thinking of this reliability aspect is concerned, is keeping in mind that reliability is a continuous process. It's not something that, you're gonna define at the start and then you're gonna achieve at a certain point. It's like this infinite curve which never really reaches its goal, but each progression is, it's like it takes you be closer to your destiny. And you should think that as a continuously evolving process, where each incremental improvement is basically take you closer and closer to your end goal of defining and, delivering this super awesome reliable experience for your customers. And where do you start? Like, it's very difficult at the start. It looks like, oh, you're gonna deliver this pleasant experience for this millions of users, but where do you start? I think each great automation always started with a very hacky script, something that was done manually 1 second, and the third time someone really thought of, like, writing a bash script to get things done. I think that's where the automation really starts. And it's okay to be happy. It's okay to write your bash script. It's okay to have, like, in a very buggy script to start with, but that's the first step you need to take before you actually start investing into way better tools and way better processes out there. Keep learning, keep evolving, but at the same time, you need to start somewhere. One, second, keep your continuous involvement and continuous improvement going on, because this is a continuous cycle. It is never gonna end. Each incremental step is gonna basically take you closer to your end goal, and you need to basically keep yourself engaged and involved in improving the reliability aspect. And for that, I think you really need to invest in right a set of, as I said in the previous slide, define the right SLO metrics, define the right reliability metrics. Maybe start with 99% of reliability for an application, and eventually challenge yourself that, next year we're going to target 99.9% reliability, 99.99% of reliability or availability of our application, and take it from, like, 99 and 99.9 is a huge curve. 99.9 to 99.99 is the second exponential investment that you really need to make. There are some crazy numbers out there at Google, like, that we consider, like, each incremental line is like tons of efforts basically to get that going. But I think the point I want to make is this is a continuously evolving process. It's a process that is gonna keep on going, and you really need to keep yourself focused, and you need to start somewhere as for building this reliability process. Oh yes, and don't expect perfect results at the start. It is gonna evolve. It is gonna basically reach to a state where you're gonna be happy for that state of your customer and for that stage of your company. But eventually, there would be a next evolution story that you would go through. You might want to scrap a lot of things and build all over again. So it's a constant process. You need to really keep yourself evolving as the reliability and the story of your organization evolve. As you're thinking, as we are basically learning to understand how do you start to think, I think one of the most important things and the questions to answer here is how do you learn? Because there's this vast amount of information out there. You can go all the down to the stack, like at the kernel level, and understanding how, like, how interrupts work, how operating systems are basically designed, to how paging and low level memory mapping really works, to things like, how networks are designed, how TCP/IP model works, and how basically this. I mean, you can look at the entire spectrum and go all the way to like how this modern agentic AI applications are designed and what's this ML algorithm really doing and how this ML machines and ML models are deployed. I think the point here is this is a vast domain, right? You can always keep learning. There's also a security aspect of it. There are vulnerabilities, there are different attacks, and as a SRE, as a site reliability engineer, you really need to keep yourself heads above the ground and understand like what's going out in the market to be aware, like, these are the set of vulnerabilities out there. You need to basically take those design considerations while you're designing those applications. Compliance requirements is a another aspect that you need to really keep yourself with. And while you're like keeping yourself up with all these traditional aspects of learning, there's a lot evolving in the computer industry. NVIDIA keeps rolling out new hardwares. Google is coming up with new technologies. There are new tools coming up in the market. Something that you were invested in for like last 5 years suddenly gets changed. You were running your monolithic applications, like maybe designed your VPCs in cloud and designed some EC2 applications, and suddenly there's like thing called part Kubernetes. It probably helps you do all those things in the span of a second. Maybe that's how that is going to solve your problem. So, I mean, the point here is you are continuously learning, you are continuously evolving. Where do you keep yourself grounded is the most important question. And that's where I think I believe in this concept of T model of learning, where you keep yourself breath going, you keep yourself learning, you keep attending sessions, you keep attending conferences, you you keep understanding what is going out in the market, but at the same time, there is one single domain, there is one single choice of your learning that you keep going deep down and be an expert of that field. That is actually going to keep you going on a long run. And this n number of things that are happening on the breadth side of the world will actually help you navigate your career in the right direction. Otherwise, it gets very crazy. Like, you cannot really keep up with what's happening out there. You cannot really understand each and everything and how it really operates. And it's fine. Like, understanding that you don't know everything is way better than saying that I know everything and I can fix everything. I mean, as a site reliability engineer, that's one of the important learnings that I have had over the years is you cannot know everything. There are only certain aspects of the system that you can really know very well, but that also doesn't mean that you should just stay invested in that aspect of the problem. You need to increase your broader scope of learning. You need to just at least have a right balance of like, what depth and what breadth you are basically having for different set of tools, technologies, and the new evolution that is happening in the market. And this goes a long way. I think the another thing that is very core to a site reliability engineer is basically dealing with incidents. Like I always feel site reliability engineer is more like the soldier standing in the forefront and ensuring that his experiences of his end user will not be protected and mitigated in the right way. And while you're doing this entire incident handling process, I think one great learning that I have had over the course of this N year is blameless culture. It is a very important part of one site reliability engineers learning to understand what this blameless culture essentially means. It is very helpful in basically when you're defining postmortems, when you're writing things down on the postmortem of why something happened, how something happened. It really addresses the aspect of team. It addresses a collective problem solving approach where you define what really happened, how it could be avoided, what you need to ensure, what could be done so that it doesn't really happen. And you're not pointing it at other people. You're basically taking it as a responsibility, your own responsibility, and owning things to yourself. And I think that this thing really goes a long way. The second thing while dealing with fires in production is basically you really need to start thinking about going from this firefighting mode to basically a fire prevention mode. If there is fire for the first time, maybe it was not avoided, it couldn't be avoided. But the second time, if that happens, then probably having a mindset that we need to really address this for a long term is something that should come to your mind. And I think that is very important because that's how you keep yourself invested into new things rather than going back to the same old aspects and keep fixing things again and again over. Also, from prevention perspective, I always feel it is more important to invest in long-term projects. If something has happened for once or twice, you should really invest your energy in ensuring that this doesn't happen. And what's the long-term solution to basically address this? Rather than showing short-term mitigations. Short-term things are mitigations which are good to stop the bleeding, but long-term solutions ensures that they never occur or reoccur, so that your energy is not wasted in figuring out the problem, or it's not always you are who is dealing with the problem. So you're also saving your teammates basically from the fire. So that's a important thing. The third and the most important thing over here is you really need to move away from tools and move towards principles. What are the principles on which this observability and this reliability story is built on? Because most of the times the fundamental aspects of reliability, scalability, observability, they always have stayed the same, irrespective of what tools you have used and what technologies you are using to power your applications. You move from one company to another, you move from one application to another. The most important thing is the principles on which these things operate always stay the same. So I would generally invest my energies in understanding and learning more about these principles rather than the actual tools. You can pretty much learn a tool in few a number of days, get over it, and move on to a new tool. But I think that investing your right energy in understanding these principles is very important, and that's how you pass on the knowledge. It is very crucial as an site reliability engineer. If you have defined a certain principle and acknowledge something, you really need to write it down, pass it on to the next SRE, or make it more like a defining principle for your field, so that everyone acknowledges it and follows by it, so that it's more like a standard. So setting standards is very important for the site reliability engineer. I think last and the most important thing, if the life of an SRE or the mindset of an SRE is, you should be involved and thinking about building a community, staying with the community, because I feel community learning is very important. That keeps you upgraded and abreast with what's happening in the society. So going out, connecting with the people, knowing what's happening out there, sharing your thoughts, sharing your insights to the people, evangelizing what you have done within an organization is very important, because it not just helps you grow, but also helps other people grow along with you. And it's the collective mindset that solves a larger problem. I feel we have been here because we are standing on this shoulders of this thousand great people who build the underlying technologies, and we are like building the next layer of technology solutions on top of that. So I think it is very important for a site reliability engineer to develop a mindset where he has to learn, but at the same time he has to like share this knowledge and information for the outer world. Basically evolve, learn, keep sharing, keep growing. And yeah, that's I feel is something of very crucial importance for a site reliability engineer. Yes, that's all I had for this session. Hope you enjoyed my thoughts and my ideas about site reliability and the design thinking. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to guide you along. And thank you for the organizations for organizing this awesome event. Thank you.